What do Trump supporters actually want? We heard all sorts of things during the campaign trail about lower prices, a secure border, and no new wars. Those things resonate so well as campaign issues. I mean, who doesn't want to pay less? Who doesn't want their border to be secure? Who doesn't want wars to stop? But did he actually deliver on those things? No, no, and no are the answers to all three. So, what do Trump supporters actually want? What's the stuff that they actually care about when Trump is in office? Because when he's in office, he's doing a whole lot of different things than what he simply said he was going to do on the campaign trail and what his supporters insisted we needed to vote for him based on. So yeah, they said that, vote for him and you will actually have a new direction in terms of foreign policy. No more neoconservatism and no more neoliberalism. This is a new way forward. We're not doing the whole Dick Cheney thing. Dick Cheney endorsed Kamala Harris, so you can't vote for her, right? You have to vote for Trump because he's her opponent. The establishment is against Trump, and the establishment's foreign policy is neoliberalism and neoconservatism. So supposedly you have to vote for Trump, and yet Trump is talking about all this imperialist garbage that he wants to do. All of this nonsense about Greenland, Panama, all of this stuff that if George W. Bush talked about it, they would say that's neocon garbage, that guy's a rhino. If Kamala Harris talked about it, they would say that's neocon garbage, that's the left for you. The left loves war and the right is anti-war, vote for the right. But yeah, they're silent on this. They're not criticizing him for it. What gives? What gives? Do they just use these issues to rally people up, rally up disaffected types who are anti-war in order to back Trump in the election, see if they can win them over? Unfortunately, it seems like that is what happened. See people like Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard purports to be anti-war. She claims Trump is anti-war. She goes out and supports Trump and says, the Democratic Party is pro-war, even though the Democratic Party, for all of its flaws, especially on foreign policy, was not talking about any of the nonsense that Trump is talking about as president right now. Joe Biden got us out of the Afghanistan war and Trump did not. So, let's rethink this one, please, with respect to foreign policy. But Trump supporters have nothing to offer up in terms of Trump's foreign policy accomplishments. It's just sad to see. And so I'd like to just hear some more honesty from them about what exactly is it that you want from your president? What in Trump's foreign policy right now do you see that you like? I'll ask you that question and I'd like to hear what you have to say in the comments. But I will offer one thing that I think they genuinely believe in, and it's concerning, is that siding with Putin is a big deal to them. Putting the middle finger up to Volodymyr Zelensky, joining J.D. Vance in taunting him, telling him he should be more grateful, attacking him, yelling at him, just overall whining about Ukraine and victim blaming, blaming them, the country that was invaded, for what Russia did, and calling Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator without elections. Trump did that, and they see that, and they're like, oh yes, we can't stand Zelensky. They hate that he wears his sweater. They hate, that he's short or whatever. They just are like, no, we don't like Zelensky. We don't like the fact that Biden supports him. They don't like that some people in their own party even are very supportive of Ukraine over Russia. And so, yeah, they're like, yeah, Russia, cool. Trump putting the middle finger up to Ukraine is great. So, yeah, they use that to argue that Trump's anti-war. Oh, he wants to end the war with Russia. But that would involve Ukraine making major concessions to Russia, and that's not exactly a good thing. That's not exactly what we want. That's called appeasement. You're appeasing autocrats, you're appeasing fascists by saying, oh, Russia, you just get this land, no strings attached or something like that, or barely any strings attached. Surrendering is not an option in a situation like that. So it's really stupid to argue that Trump is the anti-war candidate based on that. I think AOC was criticizing Tulsi Gabbard saying, yeah, no, actually she's pro-war for supporting Russia. This is nonsense. She's supporting Russia's invasion of Ukraine. She's not supporting an end to the war, or to the extent that she is, it's not a good end. It's a disastrous end. So, yeah, there's just not much to look at in terms of Trump's foreign policy and what Trump supporters actually want. I just see the pro-Russia thing. If you have any more to offer, let me know. He's proven to be more neoliberal and neoconservative in different ways during his first term than many people thought he would be. I see his drone strikes, increasing drone strikes roughly 430% over President Obama. President Obama, of course, being very well known for using drone strikes. Some people say, oh, it's better than doing a ground invasion. And Trump did not send out a ground invasion, to be fair. And he's not done so in his second term. But is that off the table? Not necessarily. Not with the way that he talks. But yeah, he had a lot of neoliberal and neoconservative decisions in his first administration. In his second administration, we're seeing a lot of this foreign policy stuff starting to unravel. It's mostly just talk right now, and it's dangerous talk. It's egregious talk. It's talk that needs to be called out aggressively. But typically, presidents in their first year are not necessarily major foreign policy folks. Usually, it's when their domestic agenda starts falling apart because of, gridlock in Congress. They get a divided Congress. For example, see Barack Obama with his Republican-controlled House and Republican-controlled Senate. Trump has a trifecta right now, so he can really focus on the domestic agenda. But if Democrats take the House or the Senate, he might turn to foreign policy more and become more of a foreign policy president in his third year. So, Trump supporters, what do you want to see from him in his third year? Is there anything progressives, centrists, what do you think Trump supporters actually want from him in terms of foreign policy later on? Because he has not ended the wars. He's not ended the wars, and in fact, he's talked about starting new wars. It's pretty insane. Like, why? Why treat Denmark like this? Why treat Canada like this? Why talk about making Canada the 51st state? Why be a lunatic like that? I just don't know. Maybe it's that Trump supporters just like the lunacy. They like the show. And it's concerning. Look, I get shows are fun to watch. Go on Netflix, watch some comedy or whatever. But this is the president of the United States. We didn't elect him to be a stand-up comedian. We didn't elect him to be an actor. We elected him to lead. And that kind of leadership is just plain goofy. And say what you want about Kamala Harris. Say what you want about Joe Biden. Their leadership was goofy at times. Joe Biden would sniff kids, So they've got their problems. But for crying out loud, they weren't out there talking about, oh yeah, it's about time that we take Panama and we take Greenland and Panama Canal. And Canada, you're going to become our 51st state. They did not do that. And liberals, progressives, and leftists would all call them out for that. This brings me to another issue, and it's a difference I notice between Trump supporters and people on the left. It's that people on the left can usually tell you in just this succinct way what they actually support, what they actually want. And when you point out, a Democratic politician failed to do that, they will agree with you. Trump supporters often will not do that. So Barack Obama voters in 2008 probably wanted universal health care or something close to it, public option. They were like, yeah, no, it's time for serious healthcare reform. This whole thing is a mess. Bush did Medicare Part D, diddly squat. We have Medicare, we have Medicaid, those things are great, but we need to go even further. And then Obama in 2010, March 2010, he gets this Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act, it's like, okay, it's got a Medicaid expansion. It's got the individual mandate, which was actually pretty polarizing even among the left. So it's not super progressive. It's fairly progressive, but in fact, previous Republican politicians had actually supported it. Mitt Romney did it at the state level in his state of Massachusetts when he was the governor. So it has its roots not exclusively among the left. That's kind of funny when you think about it. But yeah, Democratic voters mostly said, okay, yeah, we have to take the L on this one. We have to take the L. Obama didn't get us universal health care. He did not get us a public option. It was something he campaigned on in the 2008 election. So they are clear about what they want. They are clear that when the Democrats fail to provide them with what they want, that they're disappointed in that they say, oh shoot, I would have still voted for them, but I wish I had known that they weren't going to do this, because then I'd approach them with more scrutiny. Trump is just like, oh yeah, he talked about building a wall with Mexico during his first term. On the campaign trail, that was his main thing, build the wall, in 2016 at least. And then it's like it doesn't happen, or at least there starts to be a little bit of progress, but Mexico is not necessarily paying for it. And what's going on here with, Joe Biden might be building the wall or something like that anyhow. I remember that was kind of funny. But yeah, that's not really a thing that people are talking about much anymore. All these token issues that Trump supporters galvanized around Trump for, that they were like, yes, he's our man. They just don't seem to be like coming to fruition, A secure border. Okay, the border could ostensibly be more secure under Trump. That's possible. But along with that, we've got blatant due process violations. I thought that Trump supporters supported the Constitution. I thought that they clung to it during Biden's presidency, complaining sometimes even correctly about unconstitutional actions taken by Biden. For example, I would say that when he asked social media companies to censor anti-vax or so-called COVID misinformation on social media, I would say that would violate the First Amendment, because it's still the government getting in there and trying to get people's speech taken down. The First Amendment applies to the government. It doesn't apply to private companies, but the government here is getting involved. So Trump supporters whined about that, but yet they're like, oh yeah, no, due process doesn't apply to people we don't like. So immigrants, you don't get due process. American citizens, you don't get due process. American citizens that they don't like. They can just declare you an illegal immigrant and deport you without due process. And that's what's happening. These El Salvadorian slave labor camps are getting filled up with so-called illegal immigrants, so-called MS-13 gang members, Tren de Aragua gang members. And they're like, oh yeah, no, this is how it's done. Secure border, baby. Mwah. Perfect. And it's like, no, you guys, you purported to care about the Constitution. What is going on here? Do you want a president who follows the Constitution or not? Do you want a president who follows the Constitution only on the issues that you care about and that you think protect people like you, white straight men or whatever? Look, it's not all about you when it comes to constitutional protections. So I'm just curious, what are Trump supporters' actual interpretations of the Constitution? Trump recently said even that he does not know whether or not he has to enforce the Constitution. You do, dude. You do. You are bound by the Constitution. Recently, he's like, oh yeah, I don't know. What an insane thing for a president to say. Had Obama said it, Trump supporters would be outraged. They would be outraged. Biden too. They'd be like, oh, this guy's got dementia. He doesn't realize what the Constitution is. Dementia Joe Biden, he needs to be 25th Amendmented out of here. Ironically, there's starting to be a growing argument for Trump being 25th Amendmented. But yeah, what gives with this whole constitutional thing? Do you want a president who cares about it or not? Economics, again, this price thing. Tariffs are bringing prices up. And I didn't hear much talk about Trump supporters with respect to tariffs during the campaign. That was kind of interesting. I just heard, lower prices, and they never explained how he's going to lower prices at all. I guess by just not being Joe Biden or something, by being orange and having an R after his name, that means prices are going to go down, right? But I just didn't hear the math from them. They never showed their work. They just said, prices seemed kind of low during his first term, so they must go lower if he gets reelected. And lo and behold, even though we're only a few months into his second term, that has not happened. That has not come to fruition. The prices are not lower. What happened? What happened? So if you're a Trump supporter, if you're someone who is like, yeah, I approve of him right now, what actually do you approve of? What is it? Constitutional violations? I mean, there's a whole nother area of constitutional violations with respect to the DOGE thing, separation of powers issues, with Congress being the ones who are rightfully supposed to control spending, and yet DOGE is in there like, yeah, no, actually Elon Musk gets to control spending. If Elon Musk deems a federal program wasteful, fraudulent, or abusive, he gets to just yeet that thing out of there, just bye-bye. And it's like, no, Congress has to do that. Elon Musk is not in Congress. Elon Musk is not elected to anything. He's a senior advisor. So yeah, there's that whole issue. Do Trump supporters just want a government that's dismantled, a government that's incompetent? As Reagan said, a government that you can drown in your bathtub? Look, in some ways, I sort of see that may be the case. That might be something they genuinely want. But at the same time, look at the way that Trump is going about it. He's going about it itself in a big government way, in an authoritarian way. It's so weird, It's ironic, I actually am the one who gets to I get to quash all government because I'm the one in charge. I'm the president. The president, I get the executive power. I act unitarily. And that brings us to another thing. I don't know how many Trump supporters are aware of unitary executive theory, but it seems like something that they like. Is that something, unitary executive theory, that you really want? The president gets to have so much of the power. Any power which can be ostensibly considered by nature executive, that goes to the president. Not just the power that the Constitution says is executive, but the power that, by its very nature, anyone could argue is executive. The president gets that? Really? When there's a Democratic president, are you going to be singing the same tune? I doubt it. So, yeah, it's a big issue. It's a concerning thing because we've had Supreme Court justices in the past actually argue for unitary executive theory, including some who are more moderate. I feel like I remember Elena Kagan even expressing some sort of support for it in some ways, but Justice Antonin Scalia wrote about it. He's like, yeah, no, you can't take the president's executive power. It's very precious. It goes to the president, all executive power. So, yeah, that is something that's like, really, why do you guys want this? You're going to whine, moan, and complain whenever a Democratic president starts using unitary executive theory. This Project 2025, and then at the same time, they also said, Project 2025 is not actually Trump's plan, They're like, yeah, it's not Trump's. But if it is, we like it. Really? You guys, you got to make up your mind. Come on. They did a lot of Motte and Bailey stuff too. Voting for Trump, it's just about It's just about lower prices, just about a secure border, just about ending wars. But also, by the way, it's time to crack down on anyone left of center. It's time to send them to camps. It's time to get revenge. It's time to own the deep state, lock them up, throw them in prison, throw away the key. What do you want? What do you want? The Motte and Bailey thing gets so tiresome. And I'm not saying that it's only right-wingers and only Trump supporters who use it, but it was pretty obvious during this election. They would never call out any of Trump's most incendiary remarks, any of the stuff that if a Democrat said it, they would be like, "What's wrong with you, freak?" They didn't give a damn. They didn't give a damn about any of that stuff. And they tried to excuse it by saying, well, it's not about that. It's just about policy, please. I get that he's being outrageous and horrific in a way that we would never let a Democrat be. But this time it's different. This time it's seriously about policy. We want a new direction for America or something. But yet the only new direction he's given for America is a horrific one. A terrible, disgusting one that they would never tolerate under a Democratic president. Dismantled federal government. People dying because of the cuts to government spending. Really? Is that what you want? Is that what you envisioned? So, Trump supporters, I guess I'm just, on election day, Trump wins. What were you envisioning from Trump? What were your highest hopes? Is this really it? Does this match with your highest hopes? I see so many people just jumping in there to defend him, but how well do they actually know his record? That's what brings me to the question of this video. What do Trump supporters actually want? Progressives, leftists, they can usually tell you what they want. They can tell you what they wanted from Biden. They wanted someone to get us out of the pandemic. They wanted someone to take climate change more seriously. They wanted someone to raise taxes on the wealthy, potentially raise the minimum wage, be more humane with respect to immigration. There was a whole zero tolerance policy under Trump. That was it. And, they didn't get what they wanted sometimes. They got someone who was way too heavy-handed against Palestine, actually, in the Israeli-Palestine conflict. And they're like, oh, shoot, there's a lot of just buyer's remorse with respect to Biden. And like, I didn't vote for this. Okay, come on. I didn't like Trump, but I didn't want to vote for this. So a lot of Democrats will straight up admit, hey, we vote blue no matter who. And even though we can admit that we might even disagree with the Democratic candidate on a majority of issues, we still think they're better than the Republican. And you know what I say to that? I say, I kind of understand if you think that's goofy, but it's a legit strategy. It's a legit strategy. You want to minimize the harm reduction. And the Republican Party, think about how bad they have to be if they're encouraging people to vote for goofy, seemingly boring, weird Democratic candidates who don't offer that much change to America and sometimes even go in the wrong direction. How bad is the Republican Party if people are like, yeah, they're so bad that I have to vote Democratic? Think about that. And so what I think it's possible Trump supporters want, and I'm going to talk about the mirror image of what I just said with the Democrats, is it might just be, own the left. It's sad to say, but it might be the case that it's just like, yeah, Trump pisses off the left. That is so cool. He's my spirit animal because he angers leftists, and that's just the greatest thing ever. But at the same time, I have to imagine that if a bunch of leftists all of a sudden started praising Trump and acting like he's cool, they would say, oh, actually, this is just proof of how good Trump is, that the left is admitting he's great now. So I don't even know about that. I'm just spitballing some theories here. Do they just want someone who pisses off the left? Like, what is it? Reality show? Is it the orange skin? Something like that. The cult of personality. Kyle Kulinski recently pointed out how, after Trump's gone, there's going to be a religion around Trump. And it's like, yeah, that probably is going to be the case. Either that, or I think there would be another guy who would step in there. And I do think it would be a guy. I don't think it would be a woman, just because, the way Trump supporters work. A lot of them are like, a woman should not be president. But they would be like, let's find a different guy, a guy who pisses off the left equally as much, if not more, than Trump, someone who shoots from the hip as much as Trump, someone who's possibly more Trumpy than Trump. I think that could happen too, in addition to the Trump religion thing. I just don't know who that is. It's like, what do we want here? What do we want here? There are a lot of right-wingers actually who are like, they would have voted for Reagan in 1980 had they been around, or 1984, but they say, I don't like the fact that Reagan did amnesty. They don't like the massive amnesty he did in his second term. They're like, yeah, I'm tough on immigration. I think Reagan is too soft on immigration. And so they criticize him for that. I'm just like wondering though, where is this type of smoke for Trump? Where is this energy against Trump and some of his decisions that are against what you purport to believe? Always think think back to the election year and then think about where we're currently at. How much does that line up with what you were hoping from Trump at that point in the election year? You know, you're like, the moment you decided you were going to vote for Trump in 2024, think about what you expected for this country and think about what's going on, how much it really lines up with that. I think that's just the most important task, the most important exercise. You know, plenty of Biden voters looked at what they wanted from Biden and in 2023 thought about, oh wow, we've come a far way from what we wanted in 2020. We had a lot of hope in 2020. When he beat Trump, it just felt great. You know, it was cool. It's like, okay, breath of fresh air. But it's like the guy's struggling to speak complete sentences. The guy's made some weird foreign policy decisions. With respect to economics, he could be more progressive. Yeah, he's not really fighting super hard for Build Back Better. Remember that whole saga in 2021 with the parliamentarian and, I have to yield to the parliamentarian and Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin won't let me, and Build Back Better did not get passed. Instead, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a more mild version of it, got passed in July 2022. And there were some great things in it, but still not quite on the level of Build Back Better. So Joe Biden did not turn out to be the fighter a lot of progressives wanted him to be. But with Trump, I'm just like, the Republican Party still approves of him by numbers over 90%. Whereas under Biden's term, a lot of Democrats actually were kind of thinking, I'd like someone else. But the problem is the Democratic Party didn't really have that much of a real primary. Joe Biden got a lot of votes, but they didn't have that much of a primary. They didn't really give other candidates a chance to run against him. They kind of just coronated him. They're like, this is our guy, you know, he's the incumbent president. Never mind that he's 82 years old. He's still sharp and he's still with it. And Joe Biden ultimately humiliated the Democratic Party and humiliated himself in a way that no president ever has done. Say what you will about every president before Biden. There was a lot of clownery, but nobody did what he did. But now Trump is humiliating himself and the Republican Party in a way that no president and no political party has ever humiliated itself. He's made ridiculous decisions. He's not even necessarily the one making all the decisions. He seems totally unaware of things. For example, the Signal thing. He was like, I didn't know about that. With Pete Hegseth and Mike Waltz. He's like, I didn't know about that when asked about that. Buddy, you're at the wheel. You got to do better than that. So what is his administration doing that you supporters of Trump like? What do you think, if you're not a Trump supporter, what do you think it is that they want? I've floated some theories. Again, I've said upsetting the left. I've said maybe shrinking government, but at the same time, usurping the power of government to shrink government, with unitary executive theory. But none of that stuff really seems like it's what they talked about in the campaign trail. He hasn't brought prices down. The border is not necessarily secure, and the wars are still going on. And he's talking about doing more wars, more imperialism. What on earth? Some people were duped. And I give so much credit to the people, the former supporters of Trump, who will get on camera and say, usually on TikTok or YouTube or something like that, and say, wow, I was wrong. CNN interviews, they do that too. I was wrong. I can't believe it. I voted for Trump and I ended up losing my federal job as a result of my vote for Trump. This is insane. Or the prices are up. They didn't go down. They're up as a result of Trump. I voted for him for lower prices and I didn't get that. And these people it's respectable of them, at least, even though I strongly disagree with their decision to vote for Trump in 2024, with all of his red flags blazing hot, waving in the air. They still voted for him, but now they're at least saying, okay, I regret that. They're not true Kool-Aid drinkers. But some of these people who are still ride or die for Trump, you have to wonder about them. What do they actually want? I just wish that there were an essay question and someone were grading it, and it was like, hey, if you can just give me a good, cogent answer, you get $1 million. You get $1 million. And they would try to actually write what they want, and talk about whether or not what Trump's done has measured up to it. But I'm afraid that too much pro-Trump propaganda has muddied the waters, and they think, oh yeah, he's done everything that I want him to do. This is so great. Oh, prices might be down or something like that. Oh, yeah, no, the stock market is going back up because he said we're no longer doing tariffs. Even though if he were to do tariffs, I would still support him. Guys, you gotta be better than that. You gotta think more clearly than that. Free yourself and stop supporting Trump. I've talked about it in my previous videos. Know what you want. Know what the candidate you're voting for wants. And when they get in office, know what they're doing. I know we all have lives, 9 to 5s and whatnot, but pay attention, read into some politics. Before you go out and vote for the next candidate of the party, think about what the incumbent has done. Think about what the next candidate wants to do. And think about what you really want. Because Trump supporters, I can tell you, what you purport to want doesn't exactly measure up perfectly with what Trump is doing in office. And when you start to see that, even though you might disagree with me and a lot of the stuff I've said in this video, when you start to see that, I think things will make a little more sense. I hope that this video is helpful to you. I hope that you agree with what I'm saying. If not, let me know. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Like, comment, or subscribe to this channel. This is the Morris the Merrier, and I look forward to speaking to you in my next video.